AI in Action is brought to you by Alldus International, covering your business's staffing, consulting, and networking needs. Our host brings you the leading minds in AI, sharing their story, their success, and their advice. Focusing on fast-tracking you to the top, AI in Action cuts through the hype to help you kickstart your data science career. To listen to the latest AI in Action podcast, head over to www.alldus.com/podcast or subscribe via iTunes, Stitcher, or Google Podcasts.
Hello and welcome to the AI in Action podcast. I'm your host, Mark Kelly, Chief Customer Officer at Alldus International. In today's show, we're speaking with Felix Faber, founder and CEO of MindPeak. Felix, very welcome to the show today.
Hi, Mark. Thank you for the invitation.
So tell us a little bit about yourself and your journey to now, and then can you tell us a little bit about MindPeak? And then later we'll talk about some of the problems that you look to solve with AI and machine learning.
Right. So I'm Felix Faber. I'm the CEO and co-founder of MindPeak. I founded it with a friend of mine 3 years ago. And right now we're a company of 25 people, mainly dedicated to making image analysis in histopathology more accurate and faster. And I myself have been studying computer science and robotics a couple of years ago until 2008. I was a 2 times world champion in robotic soccer, where we participated with a university in the Humanoids League. Afterwards, I founded my own games company together with 2 friends of mine. We merged that with a Swedish company. We brought it to the Swedish stock exchange, the Nasdaq, and since then I joined here MindPeak, or basically founded MindPeak as my second venture.
So for people that don't know much about AI and pathology, can you give a kind of a one-on-one on that?
Yeah, so let's imagine that there's a suspicion for cancer in your body, and that suspicion comes, for example, from a radiology image. Then the next step would be, a possible step is that a biopsy from your body is taken. So that means with a needle or with cutting a little bit piece of the tissue of your body, and this tissue usually goes to the lab. And what happens at the lab, usually people don't really question what happens at the lab, but what is happening there is that this tissue is stained. First it is cut in very thin layers of tissue. And these thin layers of tissue are being put on a glass slide, and then they are stained by certain chemicals that show the morphology of these different cells that are in the tissue a little bit better. And after the staining process, they are given to a doctor, and this doctor is called pathologist, and the pathologist looks at this tissue under the microscope. She or he looks at this tissue and searches for example, tumor cells. Most of the time it's about tumor. It can be bacteria as well, but usually it's looking for tumor cells. And when tumor cells are found, there are a couple of more investigations being done, and then the report is written, and this report is the ground truth. It's a gold standard, and it goes to the oncologist. And the oncologist then plans your treatment, because now the oncologist knows the diagnosis of what we have to deal with here, what kind of cancer it is. So it's a real essential part in the whole diagnostic road from for the patient. But not many people actually know, not many patients know about this job. Yeah.
So tell us about the opportunity to automate some of the processes within that, and how we can allow people to do better work knowing that some of the process is being automated through machine learning.
So the pathological diagnosis workflow has a huge problem. There are more and more cancer cases that happen each year. And that is just because people are getting older and other diseases are being treated better. These many cancer cases also have a higher complexity, because we learn a lot about cancer each year, and a lot of different diagnoses have to be done on this tissue in order to categorize the cancer better and better, in order to treat it better. Now, the number of pathologists to do this work is actually going down. That means we have a higher number of cases to work on. The cases become more complex, and the number of experts to diagnose them is going down. So that's a huge issue. And for example, in the UK, there's a backlog of slides that waits for pathologists to diagnose them. And of course, that increases the waiting time for the patient and ultimately the treating options. And now if you apply AI, you try to apply it in a way that this analysis, this diagnosis can be done faster and of course also more accurate, because the man and the machine together usually yields a higher result.
So tell us a little bit about MindPeak.
With MindPeak, we're a group of machine learning experts and experts in the field of pathology. And we have dedicated our time to creating tools that really work out of the box for a pathologist. So that means that can be used in the digital workflow, that analyze tissues and find tumor cells, tumor regions, that can count certain type of cells to categorize the cancer and to show that result to the pathologist, so they can then do the final decision and come to a quicker result.
So there's huge opportunity for machine learning within pathology, and healthcare in general is just so exciting. Tell us about some of the obstacles that are in our way.
A huge problem in that field is that each laboratory has a little bit of a different process of processing the tissue and preparing it for diagnosis. That means a tissue sample from lab A looks a little bit different than tissue sample from lab B. And these differences, they are caused by different machines that they use, different temperatures that are happening in the lab. And all of that means that the variance that we get for the machine learning model to solve is quite high. So that is one obstacle. So that's one reason why there are almost no AI software actually being sold in that space. The second problem is for a machine learner is the ground truth is not very clear. We're working partially on a cellular level, so we say this is a tumor cell, this is not a tumor cell. But we have many cases in where there's a huge discrepancy between experts in what is ground truth, what is a tumor region here and what not. And that there are studies that have shown that, for example, in prostate cancer, there's a marker called Gleason score, like a grading, and there was only a 60% accordance between pathologists. So yeah, and that makes it difficult. Yeah.
So tell us a little about the data journey to getting this right.
For one part, the challenge is that data can only be created by experts. So that means gaining data is expensive. Yeah. And for us, that means on the one hand side, we need to have really good and easy usable tools that pathologists can use and very easily annotate something, because it matters if it takes them 2 seconds or 4 seconds to annotate something, because it will double the valuable time they need to do it, and there's so little pathologist time in the world available. And then improving those tools and really making the annotations fit to our architecture is something that a large chunk of our time goes into. And the second part is that we use unsupervised methods in order to pre-train networks. So the amount of data we need to train them is reduced a lot. Yeah? So that works quite well to really pre-train it with unsupervised methods to let the network learn what is a cell, what is a region, and these kind of things.
It's quite interesting, because similar to pathology, the world of dentistry, there's so few dentists now going into the profession because of the stress and strain that not actually doing the work, it's the before and afterwards dealing with patients that people feel like, I just can't do this. But
Yes.
helping with AI can really augment that journey and make it a lot more straightforward as well. So it becomes a necessity too. So we think about interoperability in healthcare. We think about some of the challenges that are there, but there's huge opportunities. Where do you see the market going in this field across the board? And obviously the world of COVID that we're living in now, we're seeing these things being fast tracked and some people just trying different things.
Yes, I mean, in the specific world of histopathology, it has been up to now a quite undigital world. So it is just starting to digitize, and it has started quite quickly to digitize the digitization process before COVID. During COVID, the need for remote work, of course, increased a lot. So the need for digitizing those slides also increased. Up to now, usually they work just under the microscope, yeah? But suddenly they say, hey, let's buy the scanner so I can work from home, of course. Huh? And of course, that's great. So let's speed it up, definitely that part. The second part I see all over the place is that in general, using digital tools is just being picked up a lot. And I mean, some people in healthcare space are not so technology savvy, but now they are pushed in trying out those tools, and I think that's great as well, because it just brings them closer to technology.
Before COVID and after COVID, you probably had 20% of companies had gone on digital transformation journey. That's probably at 45 to 50% now, which is a huge jump within over a year. So it just shows the appetite for companies to start and people to try these digital ways, because they know the necessity to start to take this into consideration too. Where do you see MindPeak going in the next 12 to 18, 24 months? And have you had to pivot at all with the current situation?
So for us, we are continuing on the track that we have been starting on, because it just fits in with the whole digitalization that's happening now in the clinical routine diagnostics. I think what we are trying to do is we are trying to build a platform where we can quickly produce new products for the market in a fast manner, because there are many there are many things to solve in pathology, and that's not one product solving it. You need many products, but many of these things are alike. So that's basically our goal, to in the end present the pathologist a big suite with all different products that help him in let's say 90% of their tasks.
I'm Mark Kelly, Chief Customer Officer at Alldus, and you've been listening to the AI in Action podcast. Our guest today has been Felix Faber, founder and CEO of MindPeak. Felix, thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you.
You can follow Alldus AI in Action on www.alldus.com podcast. If you haven't yet, go to Apple Podcasts and subscribe, rate and review this podcast. Join us next week for another AI in Action podcast episode. Thank you for listening.
AI in Action is brought to you by Alldus International, covering your business's staffing, consulting, and networking needs. Alldus offer an exec search program. Alldus can help you discover how data science and AI can transform your company. With our unrivaled network of C-suite executives and senior AI professionals, we offer retained search services across the US and Europe. Get the Alldus advantage. Become a member of the Alldus community and enjoy some of the following: AI meetups. Once a month, our community gathers to listen to some of the leading experts in the world of data science and AI. Our speakers come from all over the world, including Dublin, Boston, and Frankfurt. We also have our AI mentors. Our experts will provide mentoring to Alldus members. And don't forget our AI in Action podcast. Each week we have guests from all over the world talking us through their education, career, and more. Become an Alldus member and get the Alldus advantage. For more information and to sign up for our newsletter, log on to www.alldus.com. That's www.alldus.com. Alldus International, empowering through AI.